Welcome to the channel. Welcome to today's run through of all the latest Manchester United news and transfer updates, keeping you right up to date with everything. I'm Jamie. Before getting into it, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and let's jump straight into it. So I was only saying the other day about the stories that have been coming around about United's midfield rebuild and opportunities, and the one name and one player that I think represents a very good opportunity for United to go for is Joao Gomes. Now, there's been another report coming out today suggesting that Manchester United have had or held initial discussions with Joao Gomes' representatives over a potential summer move to Old Trafford. The 25-year-old is open to the transfer, and with Wolverhampton Wanderers facing relegation, the club are willing to sell for around £35 million. Now, I don't know the credibility of this source. It's been reaggregated and been posted around online. I have been waiting to see if there's been a follow-up by anybody of any credibility. At the time of recording this video, no, there hasn't been, but there's no smoke without fire regarding Joao Gomes. We have had credible links. We had clear interest in January. We couldn't get a deal done with Wolves. They didn't want to sell because they sold their striker, didn't they, to Crystal Palace to get the money, so they didn't want to sell too many of their players to, kick themselves, I suppose, while they were down, wanted to give themselves a bit of a fighting chance to potentially try and avoid relegation. But £35 million for Joao Gomes, for me, represents a really, really smart opportunity to go out and get a very good Premier League proven midfielder that I think improves the team and definitely improves the squad, even if he's not your main top defensive midfield option for rotation, for backup. I think he could start games for us as well. That would represent a very, very good, smart move for, in my opinion, for Manchester United to go down that route. And going off of some of the comments from the video the other day, I think a majority would agree as well that Joao Gomes for £35 million, I would be absolutely all over that deal. So we'll wait and see whether there's any more links and whether there's any more follow-ups. But we know that we are at that stage, going off of, the credible journalists recently, that we are reaching out to agents via intermediaries and, having these sort of conversations to try and understand, and narrow down our short list of potential targets. And I can't imagine, if we are interested in Gomes, that we wouldn't be doing exactly the same with him. And hopefully that might be a deal that we can do quickly. I think even before, the transfer window opens, because we know we've got money available, because we would have gone for him in January had the availability been there. We know we went for Semenyo in January, so we've got the cash to do that sort of deal before the end of the football financial year as well. And that would be, I think, a really, really smart bit of business for United. I like Joao Gomes. I think he's very understated and underrated as a midfielder. I really like his work ethic. I can see him doing a really good job for United as part of the first team, and also part of a rebuild and part of the rotation option going forward as well. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on it. We'll see if it picks up any more momentum, whether we start hearing a little bit more reports around talks and the actual sort of price. But for £35 million, that's a no-brainer in my mind. So I'm excited by those links. Hopefully we can Hopefully it is one of these stories that does pick up, but we'll wait and see. But give us your thoughts on that in the comments below. And especially when you consider this next story, which is around Ugarte. So even if you don't think Gomes is, your Casemiro replacement, I think, majority would agree that it's definitely an upgrade on Ugarte. Caught Offside saying that Caught Offside sources understand that Juventus are currently leading the race to sign Ugarte, with their interest dating back to his time at Sporting. Manchester United are believed to value Ugarte at around €40 million, despite his current estimated market value sitting closer to €30 million. His salary is understood to be around €4 million net per year and is not expected to be a stumbling block for interested clubs. So in my mind, if you can, whether we'll get that or not remains to be seen. But you're effectively getting the same. It's like a swap deal almost. I know swap deals don't happen, but you'd sell Ugarte for around the same figure that you would get for Gomes, and then I think that's a good upgrade for United this summer. I think that would be, I would definitely be all over that deal. Interestingly, in the report though, in regards to Ugarte, it does say the team's interested in Juventus. They seem to be the heaviest linked club currently with Manuel Ugarte, but it mentions Galatasaray in there, who did have interest in January. It had mentions Ajax in there, who again also had interest in Ugarte in January. The other two clubs, interestingly, was Aston Villa and Newcastle, ironically. So can we do some sort of shenanigans with Newcastle and Tonali and in the summer? I can't see it, but that would be a turn up for the books if Villa and Newcastle were interested in Ugarte. But feeling is somewhere abroad like Italy. He still wants to play apparently in one of the top leagues. So I would rule out maybe a move to Ajax and Galatasaray possibly. But if you can get 40 million euro, 30 million euros for Ugarte, and then that pretty much gives you the money to go out and get Joao Gomes. And I think we've got the money to do Joao Gomes anyway. So let's see. That would be a significant upgrade in our squad depth for sure, because I think, like I said earlier, I think Gomez could be starting for us, and definitely would be a better rotation option and a better player to bring off the bench or start in certain games than what we've seen recently from Ugarte, who's just not quite worked at United, has he? Let's be real. Now, another player that fits that mold of being opportunity, potentially cheap, although I'm not quite convinced he's going to be super cheap considering the club paid £40 million for him, is Mateus Fernandes. And again, this is another one of those midfield signings that I think is a really smart deal for United to go down. Could be available if West Ham go down. They're in financial difficulty anyway. And then obviously add potential relegation to that mix. Then this could be one of those opportunities. Now, the Sun, the son of the sun, so we need to take it with a pinch of salt, are suggesting that Bruno Fernandes is reportedly set to recommend Mateus Fernandes as his long-term successor in midfield, with the Red Devils preparing to spend at least £80 million on new central midfielders this summer, as Casemiro is expected to leave on a free. United view Mateus Fernandes as a smart, cheaper secondary option alongside bigger targets, though Man City are also could also compete for his signature via their sporting director Hugo Viana, who has a strong prior connection with the player, and that's an interesting link with obviously Viana going to Manchester City and Fernandes playing at Sporting, just like his senior Bruno Fernandes. But that would represent another smart opportunity midfield signing. I really like the look of Mateus Fernandes. I think he's an excellent young player. 21 years old, 2 years of Premier League experience. I've done a video on him. If you want to check that out after this one, I think he'd be a really smart signing. I think he can play in multiple positions as a 6 and 8, even as a 10. That's where he was playing a little bit more with Southampton, higher up the pitch. So he is one of these midfielders that's got all action, all energy, and quite creative as well. And I really like that. I'd be worried about going too young a profile, but if you've got Tonali, for example, someone senior and a bit more experience, and then Gomez and Fernandes and Ugarte goes, Casemiro goes, I'd be cool with that. I was thinking about it before. I was thinking if we don't get Anderson and maybe you do go for Fernandes and you get Joao Gomez, maybe Wharton wouldn't be a bad shout then, because then you've got Wharton and Mainu that are your similar sort of ball playing midfielders, and then Gomez and Fernandes that can do the defensive, running around, energetic, all action type midfielders. I actually think that would be pretty good. I would just be worried about the lack of experience and the age between them. But for longevity, and if you're building a squad for the future, then, age is just a number ultimately, isn't it? And if you've got senior players around them, that's where the value in keeping someone like Harry Maguire. If you do keep Bruno for this summer, which hopefully we can do, then you've got, Mateus Cunha, Brian and Boomer, good senior players now, added to, Luke Shaw adds a little bit of value in that regard. So, there is a bit of value in keeping some of the senior players to help if you are going to go for a young core group of players, because you think Sonny Lemons is very young, Lenny Yoro very young, Ahmad's not exactly the oldest neither. So and then if you add, Gomez, Fernandes, even Anderson's 23, so you've got a very young group of players there that can grow, which actually, you can look at it two ways. One, exciting because there's plenty of room for them to develop and grow into, a team that we can have for the next 4, 5, 6 years, however long they're competitive for. But then on the flip side, the worry is the lack of experience. But that's where keeping some of your senior players comes into play. But yeah, going back to Fernandes, I would be all over doing that deal as well. But I've said this multiple times. There's so many midfielders out there that improve us as a team and as a squad that it's going to be exciting whoever we pivot for, because a lot of the names that are linked, yes, they all have question marks, but it's not like it's not like they don't make sense. It's not like they're, completely out of touch and completely the wrong profile. They've all got pros that I think can improve us as a team. They've all got a few cons as well, but that's life. That's footballers. There's no perfect player out there for everybody that's very good at doing everything. You're going to compromise in some way, shape, or form. But overall, they would represent two very good bits of business. If obviously we need to keep an eye on the relegation situation. Nothing's set in stone yet, but it's likely and it could be plausible that United pivot down, go down that route, and then get one of your main expensive midfielders. But give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments below. That would be interesting to hear what you've got to say regarding that. Now, one player that would fit the mold of being an expensive midfielder, and this is definitely one that you do need to take with a pinch of salt, is Tchouameni. So this is a report I read in Gimme Sport. It's actually coming from Spanish outlet Sport. So they're saying that Manchester United are eyeing a blockbuster move to tempt Real Madrid star Tchouameni to Old Trafford this summer, according to Sport. But while Ineos are understood to be prioritising a move for Premier League proven talent such as Sandro Tonali and Elliot Anderson, the France international has also emerged as a target. It's understood that United view him as the ideal piece to reinforce their midfield, and Sport report that they are considering an important offer to bring the player to the Premier League. Now, I don't think, because I did read the article and read the report, and it was actually saying that the problem with Tchouameni is he's out of contract in 2027, and he is currently in contract negotiations, or has been in contract negotiations with Real Madrid. Apparently, they're looking to work on like a 3-year deal for Tchouameni. It's interesting, though, because we know Real Madrid are looking at midfielders themselves. They're heavily linked with potentially a move for Rodri, and then you've had the Enzo Fernandes situation at Chelsea, where he seems to be flirting with a move to Real Madrid, which does normally happen once a player gets the agreement to go to Madrid, and they've had that sort of conversation behind the scenes, and then you start hearing stories around players sort of dropping hints that they're going to go to Real Madrid. We've seen that story before, haven't we? So the belief is if they do bring in one or two midfielders, there could be an opportunity. That's why there's been so many links with Camavinga, because I think Camavinga would be one that would potentially want to leave Real Madrid, one for game time, because he's not, he's in a rotation at the moment with Tchouameni and Valverde in midfield anyway, actually being played out of position a lot. He gets played quite a lot at left back. And so Camavinga would feel more likely than Tchouameni, because that feels to me like an agent story where he's in contract negotiations with Real Madrid. Put a story out there linking with Manchester United about a blockbuster bid to take that information back to Real Madrid to get yourself, more wages, or to speed then quicken that sort of situation up. But it's worth paying attention to Real Madrid, because like I said, if they the feeling is that they do want to rebuild their midfield. Camavinga still feels more likely, but Camavinga is a risk. It is a risk. Camavinga is a quality player and definitely one I would take at United, but not as your main number one. Well, let's put all our eggs in the Camavinga basket, just purely based on his injury record. It's a worry going for Camavinga. But if you've got, Anderson, Fernandes, and Camavinga, yeah, I'm here for that all day long. So, but yeah, we'll wait and see. We'll see if it takes off. But I've got a feeling personally that feels like a little bit of an agent-driven story trying to get money out of a club, as does this one. So intermediaries have contacted Premier League heavyweights Arsenal, Manchester United, Man City, Liverpool, and Chelsea regarding the potential availability of Vinicius Jr this summer. Team Talk can reveal, as the Brazilian approaches the final year of his current deal, it is understood he's in line to move on to a similar basic salary to Mbappe, excluding signing on fees, loyalty bonuses, and performance-related incentives, which would take his earnings beyond £500,000 a week. That would be nice. Sources indicate that Madrid are standing firm on their latest offer and have informed the players' camp that it will not be improved. Crucially, they are unwilling to risk losing him on a free transfer in 2027, meaning a sale would be sanctioned if a new deal is not signed. Now, that came from Graham Bailey. Graham Bailey can be a little bit hit and miss. Effectively, this feels exactly the same as the Tchouameni news, that this is an agent-driven story. I mean, let's play devil's advocate. Let's say there is some truth in that, because we know there is a lot going on at the moment with intermediaries and conversations with agents and so on and so forth, that maybe their agent has reached out to clubs to get an understanding of who would be interested in Vinicius Jr, but then also get an understanding of what sort of ways they would be prepared to offer their clients, so that they can gather up all that information, go back to Real Madrid and say, yeah, we think this represents fair value for money. By all accounts, like £500,000 a week. in a time where we are, reducing our wage structure and looking to get rid of Rashford, Casemiro, who are not even on anywhere near that. I think Casemiro's on like 300 grand a week at the moment, or around that figure. Rashford might be on a little bit more last time I checked, but to go for Vinicius Jr. on £500,000 a week plus whatever transfer fee it would cost, I don't think United would go anywhere near that sort of deal. Call me crazy, but I just can't see that one. It was the same conversation. Remember last year we were having this similar conversations around Osimhen. Osimhen, great striker, definitely one that I think a majority of people would have taken, but he was wanting absolute wonga per week as well. And it's pretty much the same reason why we didn't go for Victor Osimhen, because of the wage. And I can't see us going anywhere near that sort of deal for £500,000 a week. Maybe there are other Premier League clubs. Maybe Man City would want to go down that route, because apparently he wants to be on par with Erling Haaland and Mbappe, with the two highest earners, I think, in the at the moment. Mbappe and Haaland are on around that sort of figure, and Vinicius Jr. wants that sort of money. But yeah, we shall keep an eye on that one and see how it goes. The more likely player, if we are going to go for a winger, is Diomande. Fabrizio Romano said Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur show interest in Yan Diomande in January, but no deal happened. Now Liverpool are monitoring him, while Paris Saint-Germain and Bayern Munich are also tracking his situation. RB Leipzig want him to stay with a new deal, but the summer move remains possible. And they mentioned about 80 to 100 million euros, which is the fee that RB are sticking to at this moment in time. But whether they would still get that in the summer, we'll have to wait and see. But Diomande still seems like a player that we are very, very interested in, but so are other teams. So we don't know if we would win that race, or whether we have the finances to compete. With a lot of our resources going to have to go on the midfield this summer. But then also RB Leipzig do want to try and tie him down to like another deal, maybe with a release clause in for next year or the year after. And they're good at doing that. Ultimately that's what happened with Sesko as well. Sesko had the opportunity to join. I think we were interested in him a couple of years before we signed him. So were Arsenal. But he decided to stay at RB for another season to help his development and his growth. So it is a tactic that's worked quite well for RB Leipzig in the past. But we'll just wait and see how it happens. But, we know we've got interest in Yan Diomande. He's a player that we're watching and, looking at. If he becomes available, maybe we would make a move. But again, so many different variables on that. Whether we would be able to beat these other teams if they all go for him, whether he signs a new contract, we'll wait and see. But it does feel like that's, Gonna be one to watch going forward, I think, Yan Diomande. But give us your shouts on that one in the comments down below. But from one winger to potentially another one, depending on where you see him fitting in the team. Patrick Dorgu has returned to individual training on the grass at Carrington. So depending on who you believe, there's been some stories that potentially he might be available in time for the Leeds game. That obviously not going to start, but as part of the squad or back in first team training ahead of the game for Leeds. I still think it's a little bit too soon with the fact he's been out for quite a few weeks. There are some reports suggesting that he's hopeful to be back by the end of the season. So it still could be, it could be something where he returns hopefully in a couple of weeks, or it could be something where it still takes a little bit longer for him to come back. But that is a big boost, because he was on absolute fire before he got injured and was a big blow for us, really. I think he was, and it'll be interesting to see when he does come back, where does he fit? Because it was Cunha that was out of the team for Dorgu. For Michael Carrick's first few games, he was playing Dorgu ahead of Cunha. Cunha was doing really well off of the bench, but now Cunha's doing really well, earned his place, I think, in the first team. Does he play him at left back? I don't think Michael Carrick will. I think he'll stick with Luke Shaw, and he'll want that experience at the back. So does Dorgu then become your substitute to bring on off the bench? Going to be really interesting to see how that works, but it's a good headache to have. It gives us a lot of potential opportunities and a lot of rotation and a lot of, either way, if you've got Cunha coming off the bench or Dorgu coming off the bench, I'd be very, very happy with either of that towards the end of the season. I'd still like to see Dorgu and Cunha down that left-hand side for a few games just to see how it fares. And then hopefully going into the summer, we'll know. Because if it works really well, then actually you're then looking maybe at another winger that could, like a Njai, that can play left, right, centrally as your sort of rotation option to help. Or do you look at a left back if Dorgu's not quite as effective there as he is going forward, and then you use Dorgu as your sort of extra winger? I'd be interested to see how that worked out, but we'll wait and see. But encouraging, exciting anyway to get to get Dorgu coming back. Now, one player that might not be coming back is Ligt, the son. So we're saying that Mateus Ligt has been out for over 4 months with a back injury, is unlikely to return before the season's end. The defender hopes to play again, but with few games left, it's a big risk. So, and I think, you know, the season ends at the end of next month. How sad is that? We've been waiting for what feels like months anyway between games, and there's only a handful left between now and the end of the season. And with a back problem, unlikely he's going to be risked and forced to come back. Hopefully we've got enough and we don't have, you know, any more dramas. Obviously, Maguire's going to be suspended for the next game. There is a feeling that Martinez might be back in time, which will be good. And then you've got Martinez and Yoro, I suspect, for the centre halves for that game. And then Maguire, if it is just a 1-game suspension that he receives, then he'll be back. But yeah, not looking good for Mateus Ligt, is it? And I wonder if that's why we're starting to hear a few more links with centre-backs. We've had a chat recently with Jared Branthwaite, which is what I mentioned at the start. That's where we're at this moment, going with intermediaries and having these sort of conversations. There's links with Lukiba that keep coming up every now and again. He seems to be a name that is available in the summer as well for you know, a decent fee, around 60 million. I think Romano was saying the other day, around that sort of price. I think he's got an 80 million euro release clause, if I remember. But RB Leipzig are happy to sell him for less than that, which is interesting. There's a few other, you know, centre backs that we have been linked with. Obviously, we're keeping an eye on the Schlotterbeck situation. That was the big story a couple of days ago. And going off of the comments, I think a majority of you would be all over that deal. If he doesn't sign a new deal at Dortmund and he's available for like 35 million pounds, I would absolutely jump at the chance of doing that deal. So maybe they're worried about De Ligt's long-term fitness, and you know, it's sad if that is the case, but you know, we have to protect ourselves as a club. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Give us your thoughts and feelings on that, though, in the comments down below. Give us your thoughts on all the other topics discussed in today's video. The video that's you all up to date with the latest news and transfer updates. Don't forget to smash a like on the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. See you in the next one.